You want to lead?
Yes. The lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Hi, this is Chelsea and Tony, and we're covering Lightroom 6 and Lightroom CC. You're hearing it here first, maybe second, but it's all up to date.
This is the latest release of Adobe's popular photo editing software. This is the software you use to organize your hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of photos, as well as doing what they consider to be light editing. So organizing and kind of light editing. Lightroom is designed for workflow. It's designed to get you through the editing process quickly so you can get back out and shooting pictures. And it's been 2 full years. Make sure you mute your computer. It's been 2 full years since Adobe released an update, Lightroom 5, and even that update was kind of minor. So we're really excited to see this. We're going to go through all the new improvements and tell you which ones are worth it for you and whether or not you want this upgrade. This is a live broadcast, and you can communicate to us live in 2 different ways. The first is via Twitter. Write a tweet with hashtag TCLive. Justin will get it, throw it up on screen, and he can also ask us in real time. Or if you're engaged on YouTube, type a comment. Our screener, Siobhan, in Pennsylvania, is reviewing the comments, screening them, and she can jump in at any time to ask us those questions, and we'll do our best to field them. I will also say there's going to be a follow-up video after this. Adobe has not yet officially released the bits. So once we get the software itself, we're going to play with it. We're going to do performance tests on it, find out exactly how much of a gain that we get, compare the new features to the third-party alternatives that we've been using up until this point to determine whether or not it's better, how it actually compares, see how everything works in the real world. So be sure to subscribe to see that. The pricing on Lightroom 6 is $149 in the US and $79.99 if you're a teacher or a student. These are pretty standard. You can pick it up. Well, these prices are what they've been. And a lot of people ask me about the teacher or student licenses, and basically you need to be a teacher or student with an educational address, and you need to be using it for the purposes of education. The software itself, however, is the full version of Lightroom 6. It's not limited, but you're legally and ethically not supposed to be using it for business. So technically, if your kid had a high school address or something, you could probably defraud Adobe and use that address to buy it cheaper, but you should not do that. Just buy the full thing. It's actually a really good price.
Why are you giving people tips?
Well, because I get questions about specifically how they determine it and what the differences are. But no, I generally don't think people should do that. And there's a better option, which is Lightroom CC.
Yeah, I like the idea of Lightroom CC.
Yeah,
this is like a pay by the month type thing, right?
A lot of people hate this. Lightroom 6 is a perpetual license.
Yeah.
You can continue to use it forever, even after it's long outdated. But how long are you really going to be using it? There are a couple of reasons why you will want to upgrade to Lightroom 7 whenever that is.
Right.
First, if you ever buy a new camera, after the next version of Lightroom is released, you'll have to upgrade just to get RAW compatibility.
Right.
So it's not going to continue to remain useful except with current older cameras. The Lightroom CC deal, which is a monthly subscription, it's $9.99 a month, I think, if you agree to a 1-year contract.
Okay.
It also includes Photoshop, which is tremendous. So you get these 2 applications, and it doesn't hurt as much as paying all the money out at once, and you get updates for life. Lightroom CC also includes Lightroom Mobile. So it's kind of it's an app I hate.
You don't like Lightroom Mobile?
No.
Is that something you think they'll update with Lightroom 6?
Yes, they are providing a few updates to it, and it doesn't seem to be available in the Apple iTunes store yet.
Yeah.
I also say Lightroom Mobile, you only care if you have an iPhone or an iPad. It's an iOS app. It does not work on Android phones, which 2 out of 3 people use, including myself. But when I do use it on an iPhone, I find it kind of clumsy, and there are lots of mobile apps that I prefer over Lightroom Mobile for doing what it does.
Right.
But they are making adjustments to it, and that's something that we'll review in detail once it's released. If you do want to sign up for Creative Cloud, you can go to sdp.io/Adobe Deal. Again, I think this is the better option for most people. I also warn you that the $9.99 a month is in the US. Pricing varies for countries outside the US. And in some places, it's much higher for no particular good reason. And that makes a lot of people mad. They say, why does Adobe charge me so much more? And I guess it's because they can. They've provided some explanations for it. Yeah, sometimes there's like value-added taxes or something, but yeah, it can be more in other countries. I
With
also
this
want to
update,
announce,
yeah, we'll be updating our books. So we had our Lightroom 5 book, now it's Lightroom 6 and CC. We're going to be adding more videos. We're going to be adding all of the updates that came with Lightroom 6, Lightroom CC, obviously. And we're going to have a pre-sale deal. So you can go to sdp.ilr6 and you can get it cheaper. We're going to include 250 presets. It's over 250 pages. It's not a skimpy little ebook. It's a real book. And $19.99 for the paperback, $5 off if you already have the Lightroom 5 book. We're going to cut you a deal.
yeah, whether you have the ebook or the paperback book. So if you already have the ebook or the paperback book and you just want to update to the new ebook,
Yeah.
it's $5. Because we don't want to charge you the full upgrade price because we're not going to rewrite the book from scratch.
Right.
Most of Lightroom stays the same. So I will be updating and making sure everything is up to date. And I'll be covering the new features in detail. And we're adding new content that people have requested. So
Right.
there's going to be quite a bit of new content, probably more than 14 hours, in fact.
being
So we're not
conservative.
going to charge you the full price. We like to take care of people who've already bought in and make sure that that value remains. But the Lightroom 5 book will remain, and we'll have the new Lightroom 6 book. Jump on it now, and you will get access to our beta content as we produce it. The new videos that we make about Lightroom 6 and the new chapters and all the new updates will come to you instantly. You also get access to our Lightroom group, which is a really popular place to work with your peers.
It's a nice place.
Yeah, it is.
And I make my Lightroom videos. If I go in the group, I usually ask you guys what you want, and then we update the videos based on what our readers want because we like you guys.
The current version of the Lightroom 5 book is the best rated Lightroom book in the world and one of the best rated instructional books ever. It's also usually the best-selling Lightroom book. It
comes
trades
with
places,
a
but
life-size version of my face.
yes, very close to life size. The existing book includes 150 presets. This one will include over 250 presets. We're going to give you even more presets. Anyway, check it out now at sdp.io/buy-LR6. Let's get into the new features
get into
in
it.
Lightroom.
I'm excited about this one.
Yes, this one is the feature that I am the most excited about.
Face recognition, everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
And I see some really practical applications.
Yeah, if you've used Lightroom for your family pictures, you know that, well, at some point you're like, oh, I need to find a good picture of my daughter. And then you start to scroll through your thousands and thousands of pictures of cars and landscapes and travel, and you're just looking for ones of your daughter. And maybe you've been extremely patient and you've gone through and clicked every picture as you went and labeled them.
Yeah.
That's extremely time consuming to do that sort of manual categorization. Often what I'll do is if I import 100 pictures of you and Madeline, I'll put both your names in there. So some of the tags will be correct and some of them won't.
Yeah.
It can be really difficult. Face recognition is a feature that goes through the catalog, and Justin has a video clip to play for it. It goes through the catalog and looks at the pictures to determine which ones have faces. Then it will group the pictures together and help you assign a name to it. Justin, are you able to play that video clip?
Thank you.
Okay. So it makes it easy to assign these new types of tags, keyword tags, to the faces. And thus you can tag the pictures with names much faster than you would otherwise, because manually clicking them and adding a keyword is an extremely slow process, and you will tend to miss pictures, which means you will never find those pictures again.
Yeah.
This will be a lifesaver when you go back and your daughter's graduating high school and you want to make the little photo book that goes through her life.
Yeah.
Or when the soccer team finishes up the big season and they've won and you want to make a series of pictures for the entire team. You'll be able to use the face tracking to tag the individual members of the team and make sure that you get some pictures of every single member. If there's a family reunion and you want to make sure that there's a picture of everybody in there, I think it'll be really useful.
Or if you shoot a wedding.
I was going to say, I think there are professional implications too.
Yeah, we shot a wedding and the bride wanted to know if there were more pictures of her father. And then I would have had to go through thousands of pictures.
Yes.
This would have really helped.
That's a common request. And if you're putting together a wedding photo album, you want to make sure every guest has some presence in that album.
Right.
And that is extremely laborious because weddings often have more than 100 guests.
Right.
And this promises to make that easier. Again, right now, what we have are Adobe's marketing materials. They haven't released the actual bits. We'll go through and find out just how productive this actually is, how much time it actually saves you.
Well, not only that, I had some questions about it. How accurate is it? And is it intelligent? Does it learn people and then the next time you import photos, it keeps working? Or do you have to keep going through and teaching the program how to recognize people? So I'm curious to see if it actually works or if it's just going to be more of a pain than it's worth. So
Yeah, and looking at the sample videos that Adobe provides, even their sample videos, it didn't prove totally accurate.
I saw it kind of compiled the pictures and then you had to label them and it.
Yeah, and I'm just estimating based on their video, it seemed like it was about 60% accurate. People say that humans are 97.53% accurate at identifying whether two pictures contain the same face or not.
Wow, really?
Facebook has an amazing facial recognition system that they claim is 97.25% effective. And I would believe it because we use it all the time when we upload pictures to Facebook, and it works amazingly. In fact, when it makes mistakes, it tends to connect close relatives.
Yeah.
Like it will.
Me and Madeline, it's done.
Yeah.
You and your father.
Exactly. People that I wouldn't necessarily think look alike that much, but it seems to recognize facial characteristics so accurately. So Lightroom doesn't seem to, our first take on it is Lightroom doesn't seem to be this accurate yet. We'll kind of look into it deeper and see just how accurate it is. The process that you'll go through is to click the people icon, and that causes Lightroom to go through whatever pictures are in the current collection. If you have all photos, it will go through the entire process and just spend some time churning and identifying faces. It then stacks all the faces that it thinks are the same, and you can open the stacks if you want to make sure all the faces are actually the same person or remove people that it misidentified. Then you type a name and it moves it into the named people category, and you'll see a bunch of stacks and named people with pictures of the same person. So a single picture might have 5 faces in it. It will show you each individual face separately, and you can label them. So you'll continue this process of looking at faces with or without context. You can double click to see the full picture. Drag them to the faces until you've gone through all your pictures. It definitely seems to help. It definitely seems to make it easier. It's not a fully automated process. It doesn't work nearly as well as Facebook seems to. Better than nothing. This is a great feature to have, but I looked into it and other software has had this for quite some time.
Picasa has had it since 2008.
The free Google Picasa has had it since 2008. And a lot of have been to manage our pictures in Lightroom, but then import them into Picasa, tag the faces, save the metadata, and then read that metadata back into Lightroom. That was kind of our way to do it, and that's been the way for a long time. So this is an improvement. But you can see that Lightroom is actually about 7 years behind. Way behind.
This isn't the only update that's a bit behind the curve.
Yeah. iPhoto has had it since 2009. Facebook has had it since 2011. And even Photoshop Elements, another Adobe product, which is more consumer-oriented, has had it for some time.
So why do you think it's taken them so long?
I don't know. Honestly, to see, for this being 2 years of development, I feel like I wonder if Adobe's putting enough energy into Lightroom.
I'm wondering if they didn't think it had enough professional applications because it's supposed to be a more professional program. They may have thought it was something that was for like social networking or something.
Maybe so, or maybe they just felt it wasn't accurate or useful enough to bring in. It's hard to say, but they did finally bring it into Lightroom, and we are glad it's there.
Yeah, potentially, in theory.
Yeah, the way you tag people is with people keywords. And if you use Lightroom, you know that you can assign a keyword, just a word, to any particular picture. If you had pictures of Osprey, you would use the keyword Osprey. If I had a picture of Chelsea, I'd use the keyword Chelsea.
Thank you.
Then later, I can search by Chelsea. These keywords can also have synonyms. So for my daughter, I might use the synonym daughter, Madeline, or Mad or Maddie, because that would allow me to search for any of those and find the keyword and kind of associate all those things. So people keywords work very similarly. They have synonyms, so you can assign Tony, Anthony, Dad, whatever it is, and they will also tag a specific region of a picture, just that box that you see over somebody's face when facial recognition happens. just a new type of keyword. And as you're searching through keywords to narrow things down, you're given the option of browsing all keywords, people keywords, or things that aren't people keywords. So obviously for people who are shooting their family and friends, the casual photographer, it's going to be useful. I think it will be useful to portrait and wedding photographers. We'll give it a full test. I'm curious whether it's accurate enough to work for sports photography. I know it would be terribly useful for sports photographers to be able to go through and find a specific athlete on the team. I suspect it won't work for American football with face masks and such.
Yeah.
But it might work for basketball, volleyball, soccer. We will have to test it and see. I also think it might be useful for commercial photographers shooting, say, models, though unless you had a lot of models, it's probably easier just to tag the pictures as you import them into a session. Another big feature.
HDR.
Right.
So I don't know about this one. I don't know if this is actually an exciting feature because you can already use plugins like Photomatix.
Yes, there are lots of HDR solutions. We've all kind of gotten used to it. And also, it seems a little behind the curve here. I don't know. HDR is not the hot new feature in photography.
It peaked in 2011.
Yeah.
And people aren't that hot on it anymore. But I have to say that like that really overly processed look isn't in style anymore, but HDR is still useful. And in fact, Siobhan, I went shooting with her and she said, I don't like HDR. And I said, well, look at this. And I showed her a naturally processed HDR photo and she was like, oh, that's actually cool. So it could be a very useful feature. It doesn't matter maybe that it's not super trendy.
And here's the thing, the HDR as they've implemented it is a lot like the HDR put in Photoshop, if you're familiar with it, which is to say it's not much fun at all.
Flexibility that comes with
It
RAW.
It cannot make this sort of
three exposures
artistic
and then
HDR
choose
photo.
It can't.
Photo
It is
merge
not capable of this.
and
That's not what it's
HDR.
designed for. It is designed for the natural type. It is literally just improving the dynamic range of your picture. So by default, you'll end up with kind of a washed out picture. But that gives you more leniency for recovering highlights and shadows. So it's a very technical sort of, and it's also extremely useful for reducing noise. So if you're using a small format sensor like Micro Four Thirds or APS-C and you're tired of getting
The
all that
auto
shadow
tone
noise,
option
or if you're doing night
enhances
photography,
the resulting image
which is
based
just
on the
full of
dynamic range of the
contrast with
combined.
bright lights and detailed shadows, it's perfect for that.
Yeah, we should do a video on how to use HDR practically because we're getting some comments now saying
In
more
order to
HDR
see
equals
any
more
areas
sadness
that
in the
have
world. People are
changed,
over HDR.
You might want to choose to
but I
show
think
the
that
deghost
This is
overlay.
a different animal.
This
On
is
This is
the
different.
not
Mac,
Trey
you can tap
Ratcliffe.
the O key
You will
to
still need to
toggle
go into
this on or
Photomatix
off,
Pro if you want to do
and
something
you can
artistic.
use Shift
I would love
plus
it if they
O.
also included this is a practical HDR designed just to allow you to recover more highlights in the shadows and more highlights, say, in clouds that would otherwise be solid white. You could show a texture in the cloud. Recover more shadows without a ton of noise, even if you have a small sensor camera or like a Canon camera, which doesn't have the dynamic range of a Nikon camera. So I
toggle
applaud
through
this. I'm
the
glad it's
different
there. It
colored
will
overlays.
be a time saver rather than
As
having
soon
to
as you
go out
click
to
Merge,
Photoshop
Lightroom will start creating the
Photomatix
high
Pro
dynamic
for
range
those
image,
situations.
as we can see
But it
by
also
the
does
having
basic
a problem.
progress
People
bar.
are saying
I want to
that
point
the
out that if
sound
you
is messed up.
Okay.
Oh, the audio from the HDR video was playing, so when we play the videos, we just have to mute that. Sorry, guys. We're live, so these things happen.
My bad.
Okay, so auto-align and deghosting. Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah, one of the problems that you can have with HDR is, with HDR, you take multiple bracketed shots. You take a shot with the proper exposure, an underexposed shot that will end up darker, and then an overexposed shot. And HDR blends those three together, taking the properly exposed parts of each of the three pictures. That means that there'll be less noise because properly exposed parts of a picture always have less noise. However, because you're taking three shots at slightly different times, they're taken consecutively, but they could still be a tenth of a second apart, stuff can move. If somebody in the frame, that will appear in different places in each three pictures. Deghosting will detect elements of the pictures that are not in the other two pictures and try to remove them by piecing it together. So that's what it is. It's a standard part of any HDR software. They all have it, and it includes it. And
I'm potentially excited about this feature because if it works well, then it could make my life a lot easier. Photomatix could sometimes be annoying to me and have almost too many options if you just wanted to do a quick natural HDR photo. So this could potentially be very nice.
Yes, I like it a lot, and I'm excited about it. With Photomatix, it's very slow too, because
Yeah, it is.
Lightroom has to export everything to a TIFF file, and then Photomatix has to read in these big TIFF files and then save it as a new file and bring it back in. So now it can stay all within Lightroom. Lightroom will be able to use the raw files, including their full dynamic range. So because it's integrated, I think it's actually a much more powerful capability. This screenshot provided by PC Magazine shows you all of your options. So if you use Photomatix Pro, you know there are dozens of options.
There are a lot of sliders in Photomatix Pro.
Here you have an auto align checkbox, an auto tone checkbox. Auto align, if you're hand holding those 3 shots, your camera might twist a little bit and it'll just fix that twist for you. And then deghosting, which we talked about, you can adjust just how much or just leave it off.
Okay.
That's all you could do. And then at that point, it creates a new file for you, basically, which has the brightest peaks recovered and the deepest shadows with lots and lots of detail in them. And then you can edit that in Lightroom just as you normally would any other photo. So the first thing you'd probably do is like bring down the blacks and the highlights, add some contrast back into it. But you could do it localized too. You could use adjustment brushes to bring down the highlights in the sky and bring up the shadows in the foreground. I'm excited about it. It's not exactly a timely or revolutionary feature. I think we're all just kind of saying, okay, finally. But nonetheless, it's a good update. So some of the things we'll go through when we get the actual release bits are how realistic does it look? Because, well, I think since it's not trying to be artistic, I think it should be just fine. But how does it handle little movements? How well does the alignment actually work?
How well does the deghosting work, I wonder?
Yeah.
That seems like it could be pretty complex, so I'm wondering how they'll handle that.
Good question. And can you create artistic HDR style photos with it? It doesn't seem to have tone mapping, which is what creates that Trey Ratcliffe style look.
And is it better than Photomatix Pro? So we'll have to put them side by side, maybe even use the same 3 images and see the results we get. And if you have more questions about these updates, you can ask them and we'll cover them as soon as we get our copy.
Yes, write it in the comments or send us a tweet at #live. We'll also test how effective it is for reducing noise, especially with things like Canon sensors or Micro Four Thirds sensors, which are notorious for extra noise in the shadows. We'll see. Maybe it'll finally let the Canons beat the Nikons for dynamic range. Fusion Panorama, which we have a little video clip for, is another feature. It's a software technique for combining multiple pictures taken of a scene. So you might, we released a video about this recently, but you might take 5 click, 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 each covering a different portion of a scene. Panorama will stitch those together into one larger, higher megapixel picture. And it improves the image quality, it adds detail, it allows you to take a wider angle picture than you would otherwise be able to. And it can do it with almost no artifacts or a ton of artifacts, depending on the quality of the software. So that's one of the things that I'm excited to try out and see how well it actually works. Could be very useful, or it might not be that useful at all. Also,
if it's something you do a lot, it seems like it could really change your workflow.
Yes, and in fact, it is something we do a lot, especially when I shoot with prime lenses. I tend to find myself in situations where I can't step back any further and I don't have a wider angle lens. And in those cases, especially for the still life, I just shoot with panorama.
Yeah.
And I use Microsoft Ice typically. Microsoft Ice is a completely free application for Windows, and you can drag in 100 pictures and it will just automatically stitch them together near instantaneously, and it does a fantastic job of it. We demonstrated it just recently in a video if you check our channel. On Mac and Linux, there's another app, a free tool called Hugin, sdp.io/Hugin. You can get it there. So if you're eager to get it and you don't want to pay for Lightroom 6, check out how to make panoramas with those 2 tools. It's also something covered in Chapter 2 of Stunning Digital Photography. Again, panoramas, not a revolutionary feature, but the fact that they're integrated into Lightroom should be a time saver.
Yeah, it could be a time saver, and that's another feature we will review, and it will be an unbiased review. We have no affiliation with Adobe.
Right.
So we can tell you honestly if this is a good upgrade, if it's worth your money, worth your time, and which features are beneficial. So we'll have all of that coming out soon.
I wasn't clear from the material that they presented whether it will do two-dimensional panoramas, whether you can go both side to side and up and down at the same time,
Oh, that's a
whether
good
they
question.
can be out of sequence, and how well it handles distortion. So there's a lot of testing goes on, because panorama software is actually some of the most complex types of software. It involves really complicated mappings, needs to account for lens distortion, perspective distortion, and just a ton of other factors. And these two apps, especially ICE, do a fantastic job of it. Wonder if Lightroom can actually keep up.
We'll
I'm
see.
excited to see. If it does, it'll be such a time saver. The number one complaint we get with Lightroom, and my own personal complaint, is it is so slow.
A lot of people
all
think
the
that
time.
it's slow. Yeah, a lot of people have problems with that.
And just about all my computer upgrades are driven by me just wanting Lightroom to go faster, especially since we've been shooting raw files with the D810, 36 megapixel RAWs.
Yeah.
It takes forever to import things. It takes forever to render those previews. And then even moving from one picture to the next, comparing two pictures, there's this lag. It might be a tenth of a second or a quarter of a second lag, but when you need to go through 300 pictures,
Oh, it's excruciating.
yes. So everybody begs for Lightroom to be faster. It's especially excruciating if you use Picasa
Have they,
or Windows Photo Viewer.
are they saying it's faster?
Yes, they're saying it's
Okay, how much faster?
Okay. They've only released a couple of very minor data points here.
So the actual exposure slider is faster?
27 times
But
faster.
that's never even been a problem for me. So that seems like the most absurd update. And that's one I've seen other people complain about. That's not where it's slow. That's not where I'm losing my time. And then the distort feature. I mean, let's look at these in real time and let's see if this is actually something that needs updating. Because, you know, sometimes I feel like they improve things that are easy to improve just to say the word faster.
Yeah, this is the exposure slider.
Oh my God,
with the
so
old
slow.
version.
What
I
am
don't
I-
know how any. Can you imagine if it were 7 times faster than this?
Okay, that doesn't matter. I'm just going to come out and say it.
I hope they did something else, because and the distortion is something most people never ever use. And okay, so it's under lens corrections manual. Go in here,
Okay,
but
let's see. Wow, I'm so
yeah, so
happy that that's going to be faster.
yeah, it's really designed for correcting distortions in your lens, and a lot of us will have this applied automatically when we import photos. But I've never thought about the performance of that. So for them to tell me it's faster, I feel like, okay.
Okay.
But you know what is really tends to be slow for me is just like doing a compare of two pictures and, you know, kind of zooming in. And it's okay here, but once I get 36 megapixel RAWs.
And you go in 1-to-1 or something on a really big file, you can be
Yeah.
trying to move around and it can lag. That's where I'd like to see some speed.
When
So-
you are going through 12 pictures of an osprey and you want to pick the one that's the sharpest, oh my goodness, it's so excruciatingly slow.
Yeah, it can be a pain.
Yeah, so some of the things we've done in the past is I recommend people upgrade to an SSD for the drive. SSD is a solid state drive. It's just the new type of drive. It's like a flash card. Old types of drives were magnetic, and they literally had mechanical magnetic wheels spinning inside of them, and they
Yeah.
tended to be really slow. If you get a new SSD and put it in your computer, Lightroom will be much, much faster. Otherwise, it was just the processor on the computer and basically the speed of the memory. It didn't use up a whole lot of RAM, but faster RAM would help. There was always so much room for improvement with the way Lightroom works. Now, with the way they've implemented these improvements is to push some of the processing off to the GPU, which is the graphical processing unit.
Okay.
This is your video card. And these GPUs kind of took prominence because of gaming. Basically, first-person gaming, 3D gaming requires massive, massive number crunching, thousands and millions of little spots in the world making shapes that need to be calculated each time something moves. So companies like NVIDIA worked up these chips that were just really good at number crunching. And then other manufacturers started to use things like CUDA, which is just an interface for talking to the GPU, to perform these calculations really quickly. So Premiere Pro and Photoshop, other Adobe applications, already use the GPU to improve performance. And we use Premiere Pro constantly, and it can make a huge difference. It doesn't do much in Photoshop, really. To show you how much of a difference, we have these benchmarks here. The bottom line here is a software-only rendering time for Premiere CS6. You can see how long these two bars are. If you put in the very cheapest graphics card, you can see that for some tasks, it can be 3 times faster. As you put in more expensive graphics cards, it can be 30, 50 times faster. So that's how much faster a GPU can be than using your computer's main CPU when it's used effectively. So there's a ton of potential there. I hope it's more than just the exposure and distortion slider. I hope I can just browse and render previews faster. That's what I really need. Compare things faster. Most of that I think needs to be fixed with better coding. They need more parallelism. Right now, when I analyze how Adobe works, it's all very serial. Like, if you needed to get all the kids to school, it'd be like if you sent out somebody in a 2-seater car and picked up each kid individually and drove them to school. And just one by one by one. That's kind of the way Lightroom works now. Instead, we don't do that. We'd get one big bus and we pile 60 kids into it and bring them all back. That's more parallel. And that's the way Adobe should work. And let's hope they've done some of that more logical performance testing.
I'm
besides
excited to
just
see.
uploading
I
all.
would be very happy if they could make my workflow faster.
So we've already recorded some benchmarks based on Lightroom 5. We'll repeat those benchmarks and see just how different tasks have improved in Lightroom 6 with different types of GPUs. I personally have a big fat GPU, but we'll try it with lower end GPUs too, just to see how much of a difference there are. Another more minor tweak, but for many people this is going to be even more useful than any of those tweaks.
Oh, graduated in radial filter brushes. I was really excited about this, and I've done some Lightroom videos on how to edit landscapes, and you commonly use the graduated or radial filters to bring down the highlights in the sky, and it can often run into the tree line. And then what you have to just raise it up. It doesn't work. And now the brushes, they kind of work like a mask in Photoshop. You can deselect the areas where you don't want to be.
Yeah, so this is a graduated filter, and you can see I can drag the whole thing down. And then if I drop the exposure, it applies it more to the top than to the bottom, but it does it nice and smoothly. So it makes a natural looking edit. But one thing I can't do is carve out this car. So it's going to be in a big line. Or if I use a radial filter, it's always going to be in a circle. That's the shape of the filter. Yeah, so now what we can do is we can go in and make a brush, and just like you can hold down the Alt key and deselect part of it, you'll be able to hold down the Alt key and just carve out the skyline of your city or the shape of the car, and presumably use the auto masking too to make that a little bit easier.
Yeah, so that's a great feature. And it also takes some artistic skill. So that's something we'll be teaching in the future, how to deal with that.
Yeah, and in the past when we've had to do that, we've had to jump into Photoshop.
Yeah.
Because you would need to basically make a layer for the sky and apply it just to the layer.
Right.
Use some masking and stuff. So it's really nice that we'll be able to do much of that in Lightroom now. However, I'll warn people that the masking in Lightroom has never been especially precise. So whenever I see a photo that's been masked in Lightroom, it's always, if you zoom into 1:1, you can see that it was done in Lightroom and not Photoshop.
Yeah.
So some of us will still end up jumping into Photoshop and it needs to be perfect, but for quicker edits, I think this will save us a lot of time by allowing us to do it in Lightroom. When was the last time you made a video slideshow of your photos?
Like 2001. When did it come out? And you're like, cool, bored. Look, Mom, I'm bored.
Yeah.
You know, but this might be useful for people like for a party. I know people do slideshows for parties and stuff, and not everyone is super tech savvy. But then again, maybe those aren't the people that have Lightroom. It's kind of a professional thing. I don't know. I'd like to see if people actually use this feature. I don't see myself doing that.
Yeah, the slideshow feature in Lightroom, most people never ever click this module. And we do cover it in the Lightroom book, but I never thought it was an especially useful feature. It does let you save it as a video, but again, what are you going to upload a video of pictures to YouTube and then give people a link to the YouTube thing. That's so silly in the modern era when you could just upload your pictures to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and people can swipe through them and browse them and interact with them and comment on them individually. That's a much smarter way to do things. So for some reason, this feature that we're all kind of saying seems outdated, they've updated it. And they've done a couple of things. They've added the Ken Burns effect, which means this sort of slow panning and zooming that makes pictures come to life. That's good. It's kind of the bare minimum you'd expect.
Kenny B, big fan of him.
Ken Burns is the man. He really is.
He is.
They've also had it automatically synchronize transitions to the beat of the music. So I guess you can put in music and
that
it will
could make
change
it more
on the beat.
immersive. Okay, I'll try it. I'll give it a chance.
Yeah, we'll try it, but who uses slideshow videos?
Someone said I only ever use slideshows for my family's graduation parties.
Oh, yeah,
yeah, there's a time and place for it. Okay. We'll try it.
Yeah, and company retirement parties, and then you see them at funerals sometimes. You pretty much have to have a captive audience, though, because you don't want to actually share that stuff on the web. That's not the way to share stuff, but you're right.
Yeah, it happens.
Samantha says her clients love them.
Oh, Sam's clients love video slideshows.
In Lightroom, though, aren't there nice ones with, like, frames and...
Yeah, there are a lot of slideshow apps out there that do a much better job than Lightroom does and have more transitions and better editing capabilities. It becomes a video editing tool at that point, and well, it was always just a little bit clumsy. So it has the Ken Burns effect, and seems. I want to know who actually uses it. I also want to know if it can finally export, because the Lightroom 5, you could only export it at 1080p, I think. But that's so silly because we have 4K now, and your pictures are probably even greater than 4K.
Yeah.
And we have 4K TV, so of course you'd want to capture all that detail in your photos. They all got down-resed incredibly, making them look much worse whenever you did it. So these are some improvements that we'll check on. Be sure to subscribe to see the complete follow-up. Web galleries. This was definitely the worst feature in Lightroom.
Well, we weren't a fan of this, but they're updating it, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah, there are a couple of different aspects to it.
Did you make the background green like that?
I did.
Why'd you do that?
Because I hated it so much that I just went all out ugly. The HDMI, the web gallery tool in Lightroom it's an appalling tool from the 80s. Not the 80s, that's too early, from the late 90s. And it lets you make a gallery like this. Okay, would you see these little arrows down here? You can click them to go to the next one. This is what we review portfolios all the time.
This is okay.
Yeah, this is, and look, you can put a title up here, and
so we'll see what it looks like. We'll see what they did to it.
And then it would save it all as an HTML, as HTML files and image files, and then you could FTP it to your web hosting provider.
I don't even know. What is that? FTP?
Are
you
the
down
file
with
transfer
FTP?
protocol, and you know me. Anyway, all this stuff is extremely outdated because this is not the modern workflow. In the modern workflow, you share images on a social media site, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, some other site, and then they provide a sophisticated user interface that adapts to mobile devices and allows the user to control the pacing of it. There are not little page numbers here. The text would scale to different devices and not be tiny on a big monitor like this, because this is like the real, as big as it could possibly get. It was appalling, and we obligatorily covered in the made fun of it the entire time, and I just provided better alternatives to people. Nobody really renders HTML anymore. Anyway, Adobe has
going back a little bit, people are into slideshows. We may be wrong. We may have to give slideshows another chance.
Okay.
People are all about the slideshows, and maybe they're all about this, but I don't know. Maybe not.
If you are into the web galleries, then I say go out and try those web galleries and send us your web gallery made website. yeah, this was, the slideshows were not a well implemented tool in Lightroom 5, but the web galleries were appalling and embarrassing.
You were
And-
embarrassed? And then you made it as ugly as possible in protest.
Well, look at the little
Sneaky.
previous and next links,
Sneaky.
text links that you
You.
have to click. And there's no, you can't swipe through them if you get on a mobile device. No, it comes up little tiny things. Oh. Okay, so what
Okay.
they've done, HTML5. There have been various versions of HTML. HTML is the behind the scenes code in all of the different websites. It's that angle bracket A, angle bracket thing that you
What?
sometimes see.
I never saw that.
And anyway, there have been different versions of it. HTML5 is a little more advanced. I don't know when HTML5, it's been out for a long time. Adobe is finally catching up to HTML5 for a feature nobody wanted.
Okay. What's next?
They're also now allowing you to publish the pictures up to the Creative Cloud basically for presentation. This is much like what people do with
Google Drive?
Dropbox and Google Drive and OneDrive.
I'd be
and everything.
interested in this.
Yes, I am interested in this. And in fact, this is how people share pictures now, not
Yeah.
with the stupid web galleries, but with something like this. So we will check this out and see whether their service is actually better than some of the third-party alternatives. They're really pushing people on the cloud. I suspect that will only work for people with Adobe CC and not the standalone version. So we'll ask how that compares to everything else.
Okay, Lightroom Mobile, your favorite app.
Yeah, like I said, Lightroom Mobile is an iOS-only app, iPhone and iPad, and they perhaps released it a little early. It would technically work, but synchronization tended to be slow and clumsy and not exactly streamlined. It has gotten much better since release. They've released many updates to it, and it's getting more
Okay.
and more intuitive. Lightroom Mobile allows you to view pictures. Well, in Lightroom itself, you can go in and mark certain collections as being for mobile. I guess I don't have any collections set up on this, but well, anyway, you can mark a collection as being mobile ready, and it will go ahead and synchronize it to the cloud, and then you can pull up Lightroom Mobile on your phone, and it will download them from the cloud and allow you to show your friends. You can do some light editing on the pictures right on your phone or tablet, assign them star ratings and such. So it's, in theory, it keeps your catalog synchronized, but you would only want to do it on a very small number of pictures,
Yeah.
like a dozen pictures, maybe 40 pictures, but you wouldn't try to synchronize your entire catalog. I made that mistake day one. I just was
What
like,
did you try to just do it all?
I'll just synchronize everything.
I did something.
And then it really broke hard. So they've added grouping by date, just a different way to sort the pictures. That's good. Star ratings are easier to use. They're allowing you to crop it a little bit easier and a better copy paste feature. But in my opinion, there were just better ways to do it. Things like synchronizing your pictures to Dropbox and then pulling them down from Dropbox to a variety of different apps would work on the Android and iOS with a variety of much better designed tools. None of the tools were particularly user-friendly or effective, in my opinion. It's just a screenshot of the updated Lightroom mobile interface, just kind of showing how it can be adjusted. But once you use something like Snapseed, it's so much more
I'm
intuitive
saying,
to make
like,
these types of adjustments.
Yeah. This is a little.
But I'm excited. I remain excited that Adobe is getting into mobile
They're
development.
moving in the right direction. And I will
Yes.
say, we just went on a trip to Spain and I was taking pictures with my phone and then like editing them in Instagram. And I thought it was great at the time. And then I looked at them full screen on my computer and they're just like unacceptable.
Yeah.
I would love it if I could take a great picture and then instantly get it into the social network, get it on Facebook, get it on Instagram, and have it be good quality and have it be edited properly. That would be great. And I feel like this is a step in that direction.
Yes, it is odd that we aren't there with that particular dream yet.
Right.
It's because there are two worlds. We have the classic photography world with Canon, Nikon, Adobe, and they are all very serious and rooted in the film era. And then we have the new photography world, which is Snapseed and Apple
Yeah.
and Android, and there's no connection between the two.
We're going to see the marriage of those two.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't believe it hasn't happened yet.
It's happening here.
I also want to point out a lot of people will need the new version of Lightroom simply because Adobe will stop releasing updates for Lightroom 5 And the only way to get support for RAW files from new cameras is to get an update.
Right.
So if somebody just bought a Nikon D610, which was released last year, they would not be able to load RAW files into Lightroom 4. You would have the option of using the free Adobe RAW converter to get those RAW files, convert them to DNG, and then import those. But we don't want to do that every time we import pictures.
I mean, yeah.
So basically, if you buy a new camera and you shoot RAW, which you should be, then you'll have to get the new version of Lightroom anyway. And that's part of why I encourage people just to get the Creative Cloud subscription, because you're not getting away without paying for the updates. Let's take a break.
This is when we enrage people, the cheapskates. Hey, cheapskates, plug your ears. I'm going to drop a truth bomb. We're updating our book. It's Lightroom 6/CC now. You can get it for $9.99 with 250 presets, 250 pages, and over 14 hours of video. And if you think that me trying to sell you that's ridiculous, well, you look into your heart and you realize, this is my life, man. This book's great. You need it. Tony, I thought that was our best sales pitch yet, so we should just move on.
Yeah,
The
that's pretty
going's
good. We should see, Justin, we want to see if you can play the live broadcast for us. Or let's play this and we'll jump over to
Oh my gosh.
Siobhan and see if...
This is uncanny.
Siobhan, do you have any questions for us, or have you been fielding them, Chelsea?
God, yes, I have questions for you.
Okay.
But related to Lightroom?
But an update that I thought you would like to know is that in the UK, it's 8.57 euros. They use euros, right?
Oh, it's 8.75 euros per month?
This equates to 1486 per month in the US. So in the UK, that works out to about 58.44 more per year.
I believe
That must be,
pounds.
yeah, they must be pounds, because the euro's real close
right,
to the dollar
pounds.
right now.
What else?
Yes. Okay. So yeah, if you're in the UK and you're paying pounds, sorry, it's going to be about 50% more. What else you got,
Yeah.
Siobhan?
Samantha wanted to clarify that the galleries are terrible. She draws the line there.
Okay, good. Even Sam hates the galleries, and Sam loves everything.
Sam is very positive. So if Sam hates the galleries, I'm scared of the galleries.
Chris R wants to know if he missed any updates to noise performance and reduction. He felt it was failing against some of the other third-party products.
Yeah, something we want to look into also is the performance of competitors like Capture One. Capture One
Okay.
claims to have better processing, and indeed the samples I've seen does show that it gets just more detail out of images, less noise. This happens within the RAW converter. And I think 3 times in the past, Adobe has updated their RAW converter process. If you ever see that process list, it says like process 2009, process
Yeah.
2012. There's no indication that they have actually released an updated process for this yet.
Okay. That's what people want to know.
Anything else for Siobhan?
Yeah, I've got lots. A lot of people, when talking about facial recognition, someone asked, what if you have identical twins?
Yeah,
Everyone thought that was hilarious.
I think twins are used to that. It's like, you're all the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, you just have to group them together. They have to share clothes and stuff. It's fine.
Poor twins.
You couldn't tell the difference. Who wants to distinguish between them?
Oh my gosh.
Why do we even
They
give them separate
themselves
names?
want that.
They want them.
Fair enough.
Except for when they want to perform hijinks, take a switcheroo.
Like a,
Yeah, like one of them is good at math and the other one is good at getting dates, and they do the old switch. I've seen that movie a couple of times, I
Right.
think.
that's what I would do.
Chad Kruger, not from that awful band, says if they add content aware fill to Lightroom and maybe some simple notion of a layer, I'll marry it.
You can't. I already told them this. You can't marry it. Okay?
Yeah, John Mayfield said if you married Lightroom, it would open up all kinds of what's next, like people marrying mouse pads, etc.
That's true. That's exactly why I'm against it. What would happen if you married
It's
a
a
mouse
slippery
pad?
slope.
Yeah. There would probably be world peace. That's what would
This
happen.
conversation is a slippery slope.
It's true. This isn't really my beliefs. Let's move on.
I've heard other people asking for content-aware fill, but what am I missing? Because Lightroom has a healing tool in it. I mean, content-aware fill is nice and it can take different shapes, but you can see here, you can do the clone or the heal brush, and the heal brush seems to be pretty much content-aware fill.
Yeah,
You know,
but
turn down the feathering here.
it doesn't work that great. I guess it's okay.
Yeah, I guess they just want it to be better.
I think what they're saying is something good.
Yeah. Okay, you're
It's a
right.
cool
It's,
picture.
it's just not as good as content-aware fill. Anything else, Siobhan? Oh, I should address the layers. I too would like to see some rudimentary layers built in, because that's the number one thing that I end up shelling out for into Lightroom for. And in fact, I have a long list of other things that I wish were in Lightroom besides layers that we can go over.
I wonder, I mean, at one point does Lightroom start kind of cannibalizing Photoshop? Photoshop is kind of going off in some other direction, like they've got 3D rendering and stuff. So I'm interested to see if like Lightroom's just going to take over and Photoshop is just going to become less about pictures.
Yeah, nowadays I think most photographers can get by with just Lightroom. There are definitely times when you're like, you just have to use Photoshop for that. I don't think Adobe has to be concerned because they're pushing the Creative Cloud, which includes both of them together anyway. So
Yeah.
what do they care? I wish they would simply merge the two tools. Just give me all the Photoshop tools right in Lightroom, hide them by default, but allow me to pull them up when I need them.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Siobhan?
Yep. Sorry. Erky said he actually found a good use for the LR mobile app when going through a shoot and just want to flag or rate the photos. He syncs the collection to his iPad, and then he can use the 2 hours on the train and be productive.
Oh, yeah, it is kind of a useful way to take it with you. I guess if you don't have a laptop, I would normally just load them into my laptop. But yeah, for me, I found the synchronization to be kind of unreliable, but that is something that they've improved lately. The last time I tried it, it did work well. So
Here's a question. This person wants to know if it will automatically update since they have Lightroom 5. Don't.
well, if you have the Creative Cloud,
Yeah.
I hate the Creative Cloud update process. You launch the Creative Cloud tool and it will automatically detect it, and then it will have to uninstall Lightroom 5
Yeah.
and then install Lightroom 6. If you have the standalone version of Lightroom 5, do not have Creative Cloud, then no, you do not get an upgrade.
No.
You'll have to buy the upgrade, even though I don't think they should be charging a lot for it, because these are really, really minor updates.
It seemed pretty minor, yeah.
But yeah, sorry, you'll have to. And again, you'll need it if you get a new camera anyway.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Oh, she says yeah.
Yep. Guys, I have like a whole page.
Okay, hit us up.
Kevin Remley says that the healing brush in LR is nowhere near as effective as content aware, and PS, it's night and day. Everyone is saying there's no content aware in Lightroom.
That's what I'm saying. I agree.
Yeah, I guess I felt like the healing brush used content-aware technologies, but you're right, it's not as flexible, it's not as powerful, it's just not the same thing.
It's not as precise.
And frankly, I don't do any sort of that serious thing in Lightroom. I do it if I'm quickly throwing something on Facebook or if we're on the live show, but everything else goes into Photoshop.
I find I can do a lot in Lightroom, but when it comes to cloning, if I need to do anything, you know, really extreme, it's got to go into Photoshop.
Yeah, fine selections, layers,
Yeah.
transformations.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Chad Kruger says that syncing to Google Drive would be nice. I hate Google Plus. I agree.
Chad.
Syncing to Google Drive. Yeah, I don't know what you mean. I mean, you can sync the Lightroom catalog and stuff to Google Drive if you wanted to, in theory. I will say one of the things I listed in my real needs to have is allowing you to access Lightroom catalogs over the network. It seems like such a huge missing feature.
Yeah.
The four of us work as a team, and the three of us here in the office have a high-speed gigabit network that is faster than most hard drives on computers.
Mm-hmm.
So we could certainly access a shared Lightroom catalog, but we can't. And it's a constant struggle where Chelsea's like, hey, Tony, I need this picture. And Justice says, hey, I need this picture. But it's in my Lightroom catalog.
Right.
And my Lightroom catalog is terabytes big. So synchronize it between the three computers.
Yeah.
Lightroom still provides no way to share a catalog over a network. And it's a massive oversight for anybody who has a separate photo editor, even, much less if you work in a team environment. Most professionals will have somebody who edits their photos.
Yeah.
We often do that. One of us shoots, one of us edits, one of us collates and double checks, organizes, adds keywords. We go back and forth. That's how a team works.
Yeah.
You can't do that in
You're
Lightroom.
right. They make it difficult.
You can throw it on an external drive, but then you're taking turns. You're working in serial, you're passing it back and forth, and if you
Right.
work in different locations. Next question.
Rich wants to know if you're sick because you drank water in Spain or too much sangria.
Well, I don't know, but I did both of those things, so it could be either of those things.
I hope it wasn't the sangria.
Yeah,
That's my new life.
yeah. So yes. And yes, I am sick.
The answer, I told them you were
I
sick.
feel like I'm over it. What else you got, Siobhan?
People are talking about your paleness, Tony, so we had to let them know that you're sick.
He's actually not pale in person. I think it
No,
might be
it's the
camera.
lighting always.
Oh, yeah. We might have moved the light too close or something.
Chad wanted to say that the reason he was bringing up Google Drive was because it was in response to the discussion about Dropbox integration earlier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we're not going to see any deep integration with third-party services because Adobe wants to compete with them, with the Creative Cloud service. So they're probably going to make themselves the exclusive provider. They do provide that publish tool, which just about anybody can write a tool for. And then, of course, you can just synchronize the raw files themselves. But the Lightroom catalog is kind of this closed thing. In other words, you can't simply synchronize your edited photos by accessing the file system.
Yeah.
You have to actually look inside the catalog. Any other questions?
Michael is saying, still waiting for Adobe to just combine all the products into one mega app. That would be nice.
I would love that. And it gets really hard it's hard to switch between Lightroom and Photoshop already because the paradigms are so different. The keyboard controls are completely different. And often you can do the same thing in both of them. So a lot of people don't know if they should use one or the other. It's a constant source of confusion. People often ask me if they should get Photoshop or Lightroom. And it's hard to say, well, you kind of need both, even though they do 90% of the same things, the 10% difference.
Yeah.
You need Lightroom's organizational capabilities and you need Photoshop's deep editing capabilities. But then if you draw a Venn diagram, most of it would be overlap for what photographers use. It is very confusing, and I don't see any particular reason. Now, Adobe does have Adobe Photoshop Elements, which kind of combines the best of Lightroom and Photoshop. But at the same time, it's kind of a very consumer tool. It's easier to use. It's probably what the average consumer should use.
I feel like if people aren't doing, a lot of people just don't get into the editing that much. They just want to change the exposure a little bit, maybe clone out a person in the background. So I always think that Lightroom seems really adequate if they're not going to go any deeper.
Yeah, Lightroom is definitely fine for most people, right? Okay, Siobhan?
This is a question I don't understand. Do you know if the new panorama option will work on photos taken with the Brenzier method?
Oh, I don't see why not.
The Brenzier method, I don't know what that is either.
I've seen it before. I think it's when you just take a bunch of pictures and stack them, and then it like blurs it.
Yeah, that's right. So the Brenzier method is a technique for basically getting shallower depth of field than you would otherwise be able to do. So if you had your 50mm f1.4, you could basically turn it into like 20mm f0.5 or something.
Yeah.
And get a wide angle look with shallow depth of field. And yeah, that's exactly like any other panorama. So yes, it would work with that. Okay. Siobhan?
Good to know. Question, will the mobile LR app be able to process raw files like finally? I mean, come on.
No, there's no mention of that. But the single biggest problem I had with it was the transferring of the images because they were so big. So our D810 raw files are like 50 megabytes. So I can't imagine trying to transfer that to my little phone. I would fill it up and the bandwidth would be excruciating. And oh my goodness, what if you went off Wi-Fi and you were actually getting data charge for some of that? It could end up getting really expensive. So no, I don't think we're going to see that anytime in the near future. I do think long-term iOS and Android will begin to replace Windows and Mac, and we'll see mainstream apps bringing mainstream capabilities to those platforms.
Yeah.
But that's probably 10 years down the road. John?
She takes a
Only
deep
a
breath.
few left here.
Okay.
Sorry. I have to keep clicking back and forth. Lots of people talking about SSD card or SSD and GPUs, but I think you guys already covered that. Dimitri says, if it's faster, that's what's important to me. Can't use spot removal in Lightroom at all, and my models are very spotty.
You need to stop taking pictures of cheetahs.
I also want to cover a couple of limitations in Lightroom 6. First, you need Mac OS X 10.8 or greater. Fortunately, they provide, Apple provides free upgrades for free at sdp.io/macup. If you're not up to that latest version, you need it anyway. And if you're on Windows, you need to make sure you're using Windows 7 or Windows 8 or Windows 8.1, and that you're on the 64-bit version of Windows, not the 32-bit version. If you're not sure, go to sdp.io/32bit. That just takes you to a page that provides you with some help for figuring out whether you have 32-bit or 64-bit, because Microsoft does not make it obvious. Field a couple of questions that we got before the show on Twitter. Gavin Hall asked if it's still available as a standalone release. Yes, for the first time, they're releasing it as Lightroom 6 and Lightroom CC.
Yeah.
The same product, branded in two different ways. Lightroom CC includes all the features of Lightroom 6, plus some mobile capabilities and free updates for as long as you have your subscription. Does anybody know if Lightroom 6 uses the same 2012 process, or did they upgrade it? They would definitely mention it if they updated the process. We've not heard that, so it doesn't seem like they did. Howard Leibowitz, some people on DP Review are accusing you of breaking an NDA. Did you have one with Adobe? And I think this is because a few days ago I tweeted that I thought Adobe was going to be releasing Lightroom today. And it's just because it was an extremely poorly kept secret. But no, I do not have an NDA with Adobe. We're just pulling public information. And I also thought this was funny because clearly this person's interested in the law and they should look up libel. Because you can't just accuse me of breaking an NDA. That is
Oh my
libel.
gosh. DP Review is a crap hole. They keep libeling us there all the time. You can't just say that we do illegal things when it's not true.
Yeah, we don't have a Canon sponsorship. We're not secretly sponsored and lying about stuff.
Come on, guys.
No, that's libel. If you accuse somebody of something publicly, especially persistently, you need to be real sure that you're accurate about it.
Especially if it can damage their career. I mean, it's not true, so why would you want to potentially, like, start a bad reputation for two people that aren't doing something wrong? So you got to use your head. Okay?
Yeah, you could be held responsible for any damages to somebody's
I'm going to hold you
just in
personally
general,
responsible.
reputation.
You don't want to mess with this.
We're not a libelous people, but
I am.
Chelsea is, though.
I'm a real American. I will take you out.
I have to say that I was a bit disappointed with the number of new features. We waited 2 years for this, and it seems like Adobe took features that were in Photoshop and Photoshop Elements and just brought them into Lightroom.
Then they just tease the crap out of us. They're like, it's coming. It's coming. HDR. You're like, what?
HDR.
It's like, oh, it's going to leak soon, tomorrow. And then it's not. It's going to leak in a week. Everybody be ready. And then it's just like, I don't know.
Panoramas. Okay, so here's what I had been hoping to see, and maybe we'll see this in Lightroom 7. It seems like Adobe has tops, like one developer working on Lightroom.
You're going to Lightroom 7 already?
This is just my wish list. Wanted to see. I had this long list of things I wanted to see. First, if they want to, I talked earlier about the divide between the serious film-rooted photography world and the modern social networking and mobile device-rooted photography world.
Yeah.
Lightroom needs to integrate these two things. They need to make it so that you can take a picture and then publish it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram in a fast, fun, and precise way. So yes, there are publishing services now that can get your picture technically somewhere, but it's not a very smooth process. For something like Instagram, you need to be able to take a particular picture and crop it square, but you wouldn't need that for Twitter. So it needs to be able to figure all this out, walk you through the process step by step, and then share it in a sensible way. And for some reason, this seems so obvious that they would do this, and they haven't. I simply can't believe that they don't provide deeper integration into social networking. It's not just for amateurs, it's for serious professionals.
Ouch.
All professionals need to be able to share their pictures. That's how photographers build their reputation online
Yeah.
today. And what we end up doing now is we end up using our stupid mobile phones for things. And if I could at least get it from my camera to Lightroom and then directly onto Instagram or Twitter, that would be so nice. It would at least save me a little bit of time. So what I want you to do is to take that facial recognition and synchronize it up with Facebook so that when I upload it, those faces are already tagged, as
Yeah.
well as with Instagram.
I actually
Tag
had the
it with
same
people on
thought.
Twitter.
It should be communicating with where people are putting their pictures.
Right. Other tools can do this. Google can do this. And in fact, Adobe can do it with Elements. But they didn't integrate this into Lightroom.
Back features.
Um, I can't imagine why they would hold
Because-
anything back, because Lightroom's the top tier editing app.
I don't know.
And I have no idea. This is just to say, yes, transition those face tags in Lightroom up to our social networks. Why not? Of course, synchronize. And it would also be nice.
Oh, I love the photo collages.
Yeah, you love them on your phone, right?
Yeah.
Right now, Lightroom has, the closest thing Lightroom has is this awful print module, which does allow you to do, you know, some basic layout like this.
Yeah.
And you can make little layouts with it, but it doesn't really give you the option to do much with, or to add much graphics. You can wedge some things in, but it's real hacky and difficult. If you do it on your phone and you make a collage or you add text, it's so nice and easy.
Yeah.
This is again part of the social world. You want to be able to add text and graphics and make collages of multiple pictures and make them look pretty. And it needs to be fast and easy. And Lightroom is being left behind by various free mobile tools or 99-cent mobile tools that are light years ahead.
Yeah, I feel like if they actually don't catch up, then some other company might be able to wedge themselves in and take over that part of the market.
Yeah, already tools like Picasa are way ahead, and it's definitely falling behind. A lot of people have asked for layers and masks. A minor tweak, but right now you can adjust the time on a photo by a full hour. But when we go and we shoot a wedding as a team, we pull the pictures in from 2 different cameras. And what we've had happen before is 5
Different
or 10
timestamp.
minutes off.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And if
I
they're
remember.
1 hour off, you can adjust that on Lightroom. But let me just fix the time by 5 or 10 minutes. Because then when you go through the pictures, you see the ceremony pictures, but then one camera jumps forward to the reception and the other camera is still shooting the ceremony. So the sequence becomes very, very difficult to manage. A really minor tweak. I would like to see a usable plugin library. Lightroom is very extensible and you can add software to it to do just about anything. And a
Yeah.
lot of people have added plugins. But when you go and you look at the plugin library online, it's appalling. It's filled with way overpriced things like this $15 plugin. And in my experience, oh my gosh, $19 for Lightroom presets,
What?
black and white portraits
30,
presets.
just 30 presets? Our book for $9.99, you get 250.
Yeah, right.
Plug, 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 plug.
And these are their add-ons. So there are other developers who are not participating in this. If you just Google, for example, like a Twitter
Yeah.
publishing plugin, you can find something for that, or Facebook. You need to actually take advantage of the extensibility and allow people to develop it, as well as provide a good market for people to access it, because this is not working. Let's make third-party developers fill in all the gaps from Lightroom.
I'd like to interject some comments here. Some people
Yeah.
are saying that Instagram is not for real photographers, and I just want to say that big companies are hiring Instagram photographers because where's advertising happening now? It's happening on social media. They don't want their pictures to stand out and look too real or too pro. They want them to look real because that's what's getting people's attention. So they're hiring Instagram photographers for national ad campaigns. That's saying a lot about the future of photography. Instagram is where it's at. And if you don't think it's for professionals, you need to wake up. Photography is changing a lot.
Yes, and 10 years ago, people were saying digital is not for real photographers, film.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the same transition that we saw from film to digital.
Yeah.
We're seeing from digital to social now, from interchangeable lens cameras to smartphones and such. And we just have to keep up. And Adobe's not making that transition. Canon, Nikon, Sony, they're not making that transition, but it's happening.
Yeah.
And they're all being left behind.
It's happening.
Um,
Winter is coming.
Another thing I often need to go through and find horizontal or vertical pictures specifically. Sometimes you have a spot on your wall.
Yeah.
You're putting together 5 framed pictures, or you're creating a photo album and you need a vertical picture
Or-
specifically.
I had to put an ad in a magazine recently and a picture in a magazine, and they needed it to be vertical. I had to go through and look for the pictures I wanted that were vertical. If I could search it.
Yeah,
and
why not just let me
yeah,
search by the
just
aspect
show me
ratio
the options
as
that I need.
well as with square. Really simple things that wouldn't take long at all to program that I would love to see. I'd like to see more control for tethered cameras in Lightroom. Right now,
Okay.
there are third-party tools that do a great job of remotely controlling tethered cameras, and the
Yeah.
tethered tool is useful, but it doesn't give you as full of a control as is possible. So let's get a little deeper into that.
A more efficient user interface. What specifically?
Um,
Show us. Show us the way. You just left that guy's head cloned off.
yeah.
Shark bite. Typical.
Okay, I don't remember what I meant by that.
Okay.
A lot of people ask for the ability to display focusing points in Lightroom. There is a third-party plugin that can do that, but because it's an external plugin, it's very clumsy to use.
Okay.
All that data is embedded in the picture. They could show it to you. Right now, they just don't support it. Other editing apps do. Something I've been asking for forever, and I actually talked to an Adobe developer back in
Automatic
Lightroom
sharpness
3
reading.
that I haven't seen yet. Yes,
Brilliant.
right? Because cameras can do this. That's how they focus. They look at a picture and determine the amount of contrast, and then they move up or down until the contrast is optimized. So Lightroom could look at a series of 10 pictures of a bird flying towards you and find the one that was sharpest. Especially with face recognition, it could look at a picture, recognize important features like eyes, and find the ones where the eyes are tack sharp.
That would make my life easier. Sometimes I have like 20 pictures of a bird and I go through and I'm rating them and it's like, this one's 4 stars. No, this one's 3 stars and the next one 4 stars. And you end up going through the same few pictures over and over again to find the sharpest of the best picture.
Yes, it's often laborious. So software could do that, and they just haven't. Another thing we do in wildlife photography especially is you often end up cropping. And with a flying bird, the bird will move in the shots from here to here to here to here to here. So you end up cropping each picture manually because the bird is moving around in the frame. But it can have a solid blue sky, and the pictures will be almost identical except that they're moving around. I wish Lightroom could just align the pictures for you and crop them the same so that the bird would be, in the same position in the frame in all of them.
Whoa.
That would just make it easier to zoom in on each of the pictures and see the bird's eye and go through manually.
I feel like if the Lightroom developers were watching right now, they'd be like, this guy with all his wants.
I've talked to the Lightroom developers before. One of them contacted me years ago and asked for suggestions, none of which I've ever seen. But clearly, look at the things that they're putting in. HDR, they must be working through their list, but they're back in like 2009.
Oof.
So I think I made my request in like 2012. So maybe in a few years, they'll finally get to these requests. By the mid 2020s, we might see Instagram support. I want to see all my raw data in the histogram. So right now, we see about 8 stops of data in the histogram itself. But if you took a raw picture, you could have highlights over here or shadows over here that you can only expose by going in and either raising the shadows or covering the highlights or adjusting the exposure up or down to see them.
Wait,
I just want to see the full histogram, including the parts that are currently not visible, so I know if the data in the highlights, if there is data that can be recovered, or if there is no more data.
okay.
What were you going to say?
I have a comment for you.
Okay.
Someone says that you can search your pictures by the aspect ratio.
Oh, how would you do that? I guess they probably didn't tell you that much information.
Well, the comments are going so fast. It's under metadata in the library. Oh, Tony. Oh, I'm so embarrassed.
Oh, aspect ratio. Okay, my bad.
We stand corrected.
Did not know that was there. And in fact, it's exactly what I asked for, portrait, landscape, and square. Look how responsive Adobe is. I just asked for it, and it's already there.
Oh my gosh, they're incredible.
Lightroom Mobile for Android, as I said. Preset sliders. One thing that I like about Snapseed is you can select a preset and then just dial it back.
That's in Instagram too.
Yeah, and in fact, it's in all those apps. But in Lightroom, when you go in and you select a preset for something, it's
just like
it's
there.
like all or nothing. You can't just apply it
You're in
20%.
it.
You'd have to go in and find every single slider that it adjusted and try to dial it back. So just allow me to adjust the entire preset as a group. I just like to be able to customize lens metadata because right now you just really can't do it, but I've been shooting with a lot of adapted lenses that
Yeah.
don't necessarily communicate with the camera. So when you import the pictures, it doesn't tell you what lens it is. I would just like to be able to set that so that I can find it in the future, but you can't.
Oh,
You have to add a keyword or something.
yeah. That's actually very useful for us.
I would love to see some other types of image stacking besides just HDR. Now that you have the capabilities of HDR, it'd be very easy to add image median or image averaging. Image median techniques would allow you to remove moving subjects from a picture as well as
Yeah.
reducing noise. And
People
image
were
averaging.
asking about image stacking.
Yeah. So the HDR will effectively reduce the noise, which is also addressed by image averaging, just two different ways to do it. But we're most of the way there. You could also use image stacking for creating star trails pictures. It would be so easy to add it now that they have the HDR infrastructure in there. Let's
Yeah.
go ahead and throw that in.
Maybe they're saving that, or maybe it's there and we don't know about it.
Let's just get rid of the web module. The importing feature, as you all know, when you're importing pictures, it's grueling, right? Because you want to see your pictures as soon as possible. And if you try to browse the pictures, it's so slow. And I was a developer for years, so I kind of understand what the program is doing. And as I said before, it's working efficiently. It's reading each picture separately from the card, processing it if need be, maybe converting it to a DNG file, saving it to the disk, reading the next one, processing, saving. And then after all that's done, it goes back, rereads the files from the disk, generates a preview file for them, and then saves the preview.
Wow.
And it's incredibly inefficient. And in fact, if you want to see how inefficient it is, let your import get halfway through, then select those half of the pictures and manually render the previews. And you'll find that just by manually rendering their previews while the import goes on, the entire process is done much faster. And that's because Lightroom is not efficiently utilizing resources. It should be doing things in parallel, and instead it's doing everything step by step by step.
I wonder why they would do that.
It's a process that has never changed throughout the entire history of Lightroom, but I bet they could reduce the time it takes to import files by 2/3 just by using some parallel programming and some multitasking. It's just incredibly, incredibly inefficient right now. So let's just have somebody good at performance tuning go in and take a look at that process, because the import process, I think, is the most torturous to wait for. That's where we really feel the
That
delays.
is where you feel the time. You just want to see your pictures and start editing and...
Once you start using pictures in Lightroom, you really have to use the folder tool to manage your files. You don't want to go into Explorer or Finder anymore. So you end up using these things and then kind of dragging and dropping folders. But these tools are kind of terrible.
Mm-hmm.
They're incredibly slow. The copies are also handled inefficiently. It's clumsy. It's single pane, and for example, there are just flat out bugs, like if I drag this folder over here, well, if you were to drag it from your C drive to your D drive, and your D drive already had a 2014 folder,
Mm-hmm.
it would simply refuse to move any of the pictures, because it would say that folder already exists.
Instead of giving you an option to rename it or something.
Well, instead of just merging the two
Yeah.
folders, because you could have different, but if you have the same folder name, it rejects the entire process. So then you end up having to call it like 2014B,
Oh, I
and
see.
then copy it over. There were all these workarounds I've developed for trying to manage my files. Also, if you do get a new hard drive and move your pictures over outside of Lightroom, your files are now suddenly lost. And you can go in and synchronize them up. You can tell it where each individual folder is, but it's a long and clumsy process. The file management tools over here could definitely be improved, and Adobe could build in a tool to automatically find your pictures. Just search a hard drive for your pictures and sync everything up for you in the background. It would be super easy to do. Please do that.
I don't think anyone is going to suspect that we're affiliated with Adobe, because you just gave them a honey-do list a mile long.
Yeah, I've been using it forever as a working professional, and there's all these things, especially with my development background, where I'm just like, oh, you could make life so much easier for me if you just did something so simple. I think all these suggestions have been pretty straightforward stuff. I want to see cropping in the library module. The library module has basic editing
cropping?
tools now, like you can make exposure and contrast adjustments here, and I do this all the time because once you get into the develop module, everything gets slower. The one thing you can't do over here that's so common is just to crop. So you end up having to jump into the develop module just to crop. Just let me do it in Lightroom.
Eric feels like
Lightroom
we're
module.
being too negative because Lightroom is an awesome piece of software. Definitely.
It's what we
First
use.
half.
It's what we recommend to
Yeah.
everybody. But at the same time, I think there's lots of opportunities for improvement. And I mean, does Eric feel like Adobe has really hit it out of the park with this update? Does he feel like this was 2 years worth of waiting?
I think Eric just likes to give us trouble.
There's definitely plenty of room for improvement, and I don't see Adobe scrambling to make this a better product. If you applied even to Premiere Pro, their video editing software, over 2 years they've done so much to Premiere Pro.
Yeah.
Lightroom, these are so minimal. They're clearly
Well-
just not putting the energy into it.
Maybe they don't have to if they don't have any huge competition.
That's true. Aperture went away, and now, well, Capture One is kind of rising, but I don't think a lot of people consider it yet. I would love selective sharpening. Let me sharpen just the face of a bird or just parts of the eye.
So we know about the mask. We know that you can kind of, just to make that clear.
Yeah, I
But-
just want more powerful tools because it's something that I often end up doing.
You could do it with the adjustment brush.
You know what? I did not mean to say selective
What are you trying to say?
sharpening. I meant to say selective noise reduction.
Selective noise reduction.
Right.
You can also do that with an adjustment brush.
So you can do the masking here for the sharpening where you apply it just to the face. But what I want is something like that for the noise reduction where I reduce the noise in the background, but not in the foreground. I want this mask tool here from sharpening to be copied down here for noise reduction.
Okay.
My slide did not make that clear at all.
You can, okay. I'll do that a little bit, but I see what you're saying.
Right now in the metadata, you can search for pictures that were taken at, say, 200 millimeters. But once you start to switch between multiple camera formats, full format, APS-C, micro four thirds, it gets to be really confusing because 200 millimeters on a full frame camera would be 100 millimeters on your micro four thirds camera. Anyway,
yeah,
I want to be able to search for the equivalent focal length and aperture. So I find everything with an equivalent 200 millimeter field of view, regardless of the size.
You are just
Of the
thinking of
sensor.
everything. I'm impressed with you, except for that S.
Real transformations, better photo management.
Mobile map integration.
Okay, this is not a simple request, but this is just a dream that I had.
What's
I
your dream?
love the
Sing it, Tony.
map tool here in Lightroom,
Yeah.
and Lightroom just crashed.
Oh. How
Because you can see your
embarrassing.
pictures overlaid on a map and it allows you to easily browse your pictures, go back to pictures you took at the playground of your kid.
It's like traveling.
But most cameras, for some reason, don't include GPS. Now you can get for your phone that will keep a GPS log,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can save that as a file, copy it to your computer, import it into Lightroom, synchronize it with
That
your
sounds
photos.
hard.
Let's make it easier.
How?
Adobe, make an app that keeps that log and then saves it in the cloud. Then when I log into Lightroom, automatically retrieve it from the cloud for me and synchronize it for me automatically. Just prompt me and say, hey, you just imported some pictures and I found this log that you made. Do you want to
Yeah.
go ahead and sync it up? Just save me a step. Every time there's a new camera, they have to make a new tool to import those new raw files.
Yeah.
It requires uninstalling Lightroom and installing the new version. Why is that? Just give me a
I
little
can't even
patch
handle
for
that.
each new camera.
You know how lazy I am? Sometimes I'm like, I just want to look at those pictures for a while. I'm going
Right.
to go do something else.
And because it takes so long, or because it's such a major update, Adobe, their development process means it often takes months and months and months. Modularize it so that raw converters go into Lightroom without requiring a full update. Get them to us faster so we don't have to wait sometimes 4 or 5 months for the update. And so you don't have to uninstall all of Lightroom and
That's probably
reinstall
not
it.
as big of a problem for other people, though, because we're just testing out all of the newest cameras, and every time we get
That's
one,
true.
we're like, no.
I know.
So most people, that's not a common problem, I'm assuming.
Right now the book module works with only one vendor blurb. Not a very good, it's not one of the best ones.
Yeah.
Let me work with other book vendors.
Come on, let us work with other book
And while we're at
vendors.
it, make the layout tools better. They're
Ooh.
just not that great. Instead, I tell people just to go to each book vendor's websites and use even Blurb's online tools are better than Adobe's tools built into Lightroom.
Okay.
There's no reason to use the book module now, so improve it or get rid of it. I'd like to see lens blurring built in so I could blur the background selectively in a picture and kind of simulate shallow depth of field. You can do that with lots of smartphone apps. It's not
Dang.
perfect, better than nothing. Don't you hate it when it wants to back up your catalog when you exit Lightroom?
Yeah.
You never do that. I know you don't, because you
Don't
hate
judge. Don't judge a
that.
girl.
Why don't you just back it up while I'm using it in the background?
Yeah, just back it up. Back that up. Come on, Adobe. I have but
Automatically
one
group
simple
photos
request.
for me. I know
Yeah.
there's a tool that will do it based on how many seconds between each photo, but it could be smarter. If I take 10
Could be
pictures
smarter.
in a row, go ahead and group them for me automatically.
Why doesn't Adobe send me like a sandwich when it can sense that I'm editing and I get hungry? I have complaints too, Tony. Auto sandwich feature.
Okay, that wraps it up with all
No,
of
you're
my...
not going to acknowledge that great feature. You're not the only genius around here.
I feel like you're making fun of my very important feature request, which I'm offering out to Adobe for free.
For free, I'm sure that they're.
Take that,
Oh my
developers,
gosh, Adobe,
and run
you're
with it.
so
I'm sure
lucky.
there'll be wanted ads placed for developers right now so they can get the automatic sharpness detection feature implemented right away. I look forward to it.
Okay, well, I just want to say that people said I'm so hood, and they thought that
Agreed.
our broadcast was awesome and the best.
Oh, good.
Maybe I made that up. And Carlos wants a 3D printed sandwich. Brilliant, Carlos. Way to, kind of build off of my ideas. I love that we are working together on that.
Collaboration.
That's and he said it again, so we know. And Skater Wig says auto sandwich would be great. So Adobe got
Auto
some
sandwich.
ideas for auto sandwich.
Siobhan, did you have any questions for us?
Yeah. Adrian says they need to allow scaling in the X and Y axis.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Stretch those things out.
Someone says Tony Lightroom plugin, which makes it possible to easily add missing lens information to pictures directly in Lightroom, already exists.
Oh, a third-party plugin. Okay. I haven't seen that. So, I'd love it to be integrated.
Okay, so David Sherman wants to know if we are going to have the new videos for the LR book available on an external device also.
Yeah, we have yeah. Right now we will sell you an SD card or a flash drive that contains all like 60 gigs of videos. So we'll continue to do that for you, yes. Once it's final.
Okay, we'll do that.
But you're right, we didn't list it yet.
Chelsea, what are you laughing at right now?
I accidentally called Skater Twig Skater Wig, and that makes me laugh. That makes this name not cool at all. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'm getting really hungry. I'm super distracted.
So what happens
We
if
are
Chelsea
an
gets hungry?
hour and a half in, so I think it makes sense that you're getting hungry
I'm so delirious.
and talking about sandwiches.
Do you have anything else before Chelsea passes out?
Oh, Alex said, DP Review says you've been trafficking humans across Texas and Mexico.
It really wouldn't surprise me at this point.
That I traffic humans, or
No,
that DP Review
the
said
DP Review said
that?
that.
Good. I set some crazy expectations for you.
I had to clarify. Well, Siobhan,
Yeah, pretty much.
whew, we did it, guys. We made the best show.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back to you soon once we actually get the bits. We'll run it
Get
through
the bits.
a series of grueling tests to find out how each feature actually performs and whether it's
Unbiased
worth it to you.
tests.
Yes. Because we're not affiliated with Adobe, we didn't get the bits early, but that also means that we are free from contractual obligations that would prevent us from, say, doing that type of comparison
We're
or
free women.
being brutally honest about it. So there's a trade-off, but
There's a trade-off.
we're the place to be if you want completely unbiased and unsponsored opinions.
If you like the best stuff, the cool stuff, just,
And we might just tell you not to upgrade, to use third-party tools instead. That's one of the benefits of our book. I often tell you, skip this part of Lightroom, check out this tool instead.
Yeah.
You'll have a better time.
You will, maybe.
So be sure to subscribe to see the upcoming videos, and if you have any questions, add them in the comments. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Auto sandwich.